to say it once if you write it correct. So this time, we've written a sentence that has the contract gives the lender's claim the authority of payments outlined in section 2, which is a contract. So with 4 facts, and the R is a plural condition of thinking because payments is a plural, I've now reduced 26 words and removed 36 errors into 13 letters, 13 words. And if I read it backwards, for the contract of the lender's claim are with the payments by the section 2. And section 2 is a part of the contract. So it starts with a contract, ends with a contract. You have a circle. If I want to change that, now I can say for the lender's claim of the contract are with the section 2 of the payments. Still says the same thing. I can move my words around. It always says the same thing. If you can't obstruct the sentence, and your facts always become the facts, the authority always becomes the authority, and the knowledge always becomes the knowledge, no matter where you put it in the sentence. You know you can't cheat this. This is a contract you can sign, and this is the one that the bank's going to take your home away from you with. And that's just one sentence. And you've got several hundred sentences in your mortgage contract that are all written in this manner. And when I wrote a one-page mortgage contract for one of my homes, and the person that had been renting from me for a year, my rules when I had my real estate business was the person pays $200 a month more for a light house, but they get back all the payments they make for 1 year as a down payment. In other words, if I rent a house for $1,000, I'll charge $1,200 a month. But I put that into an account, so at the end of the year, it's $14,000 in their personal account. At the end of that year, that's enough to buy a $85,000 house and qualify for the 20% down payment. And then I get, through their mortgage, I sell the house. But I bought the house, I did the renovation on it, and when I got done with buying the house and completed the renovation and paid my people, I got $30,000 in a house that's now worth $80,000. And then it's in pristine condition with new plumbing, new electrical, new doors and windows, new roof, new landscaping. Everything's been replaced that was old and then brought up to speed, new old kitchen, new floors. And I go ahead and I sell them a property that any appraisal company would welcome. And even though these people had bad credit, had never owned a home before in their life, I go to the bank of their choice. I sit down with them and I explain to them, we will make a deposit of $1,200 a month into this account. And at the end of the year, they will have a $14,000 down payment to buy this house from you, establishing, one, their ability to buy the house, and two, financial responsibility to have ownership, priority. And I also write the contract in quantum language. The bank looks at it and sees it quantum, goes like, this isn't like our fiction mortgages. So they're more than happy. And the lawyer says to me, if you don't buy this house, I'm going to buy this house from David, and I'm going to own it. I'll pay cash outright, and I'll rent it back here for $1,200 a month. He says, because when I own this house, he says, I got notarial title to this house now with this contract. No one's going to touch this thing because this is a what's called a quiet title contract. Because I write quiet titles. I'm the only guy in the world that writes a quantum quiet title. See, land patents don't mean anything, like people tell you, and mortgages don't mean anything. You got to have a quiet title on something. And when they tell you to go in the description of land, where they say NW, which is the northwest 30 feet off of a steel post, southeast 120 feet, you have to write that all out in complete sentences using the correct prepositional phrases to explain these sentences to be correct sentences of facts, not NW to SE equals. There's no closure for abbreviations. And abbreviations are acronyms, which means no contract. Because they killed the Indians and stole the land, they have an alien condition of ownership. You cannot sell your land without title, so therefore you have to create this illusion, write a fraudulent contract that says nothing, so you and get paid in future tense checks, which says paid to in future, which means there's no now time value for no time mortgage for a now time anything. Now, this is how your mortgages work. You want to buy something, so you go to the bank and somebody grabs a hold of one of these and says, "This is your mortgage, sign it." So, but you sign the back, and you're the only person that signs it. The bank don't sign it. A bank is a servicing agent. They do not own the property. A bank charter is not allowed to lend any money from that bank. A bank can open a MasterCard account, but when you put $100 into a bank, the bank can take the $100, issue a CD in the bank's name, fraction bank it at 10 times, making $1,000 in the bank's name, and then taking that $1,000 and sending it to MasterCard at 18 to 32% interest. And that's how they get their money. If your account goes over, you then pay $35 overdraft fee, bad check fees. What do you think the United States banking industry collects every single month just on overdraft or bad checks?
The national deficit.
It's $8 billion a month is what the banks are earning. That's Chase, Wells Fargo, Citibank, and Bank of America.
That is incredible.
$8 billion just on that, and that money all gets paid back. And every time that $8 billion comes in, it gets put into a CD, fractioned at $80 billion, and then collects interest at 18 to 32% off of that every month. It's a machine that is run on compounded interest, and all the interest is actually gold, which is compounded interest, which they can fraction at 10 to 1 every month. And they can keep doing that. That's why they can afford to pay 100% a month interest, or grow at 100% a month.
Yes.
So the bank is a... You have a question?
Okay, I have a quick two things. When you say you fraction bank, you say it goes to a treasury window, a bank.
I'm going to explain that. I haven't gotten that for you.
Okay.
When you sign that piece of paper, they then go to the treasury window, and they are a bank servicer. They are not allowed to touch money. They are only allowed to service it. So therefore, by giving them a document like that with 4,700 mistakes is a criminal offense. That's actually a bank robbery. And the person working at the treasury window has a 2nd grade reading level, so they go ahead and they write them a treasury check from the United States Treasury for $500,000. They then take that $500,000 on day one and they deposit it in their bank, in their name, and then buy a 30-year CD in their name, now making $5 million in that number. In your name, or rather in their name, and then they go ahead, that's day number 2, and before day number 2 ends, they walk back over to the Treasury, and they deposit $500,000 from the bank's name back in and pay off the $500,000. That's called a 3-day rescission law, Title 15, Section 1635A. So Treasury says, well, we got no money missing. It's under 3 days. They're allowed this turnover, and they haven't violated any law. My Social Security account is balanced, but they still got $4.5 million at the bank, which they then send over to MasterCard at 18 to 32% interest. So in 9 months, they've made $500,000 in interest off of this money. Then the bank goes ahead and they create a note. When they write the word note, this is no contract. It's put into a box. All the numbers on in the document, and all the numbers in the boxes are an enclosed area which can't be considered. A $sign written here has 1 line through it, which means Federal Reserve. If it has 2 lines through it, it's called gold. Now, it used to be connected, which meant U.S. Now, Walt Disney did this in 1933 when they made the Mickey Mouse cartoon and Bart, the bandit. If you look at it, he's always running around with a US dollar sign on the bag of gold, because back then, and prior to 33, Walt Disney was using this. And so when they took that off, they made it a gold. That's why when you get a cashier's check, the cashier's check doesn't have one line through it, it has two lines through it. When the Red Fox stamp was made on November 2nd, 1999, it had a dollar sign with two bars through it. It was a gold certificate. Those are worth $10 a piece today. So if you see them on the internet, they're going to run from $6 to $10 right now for coin collectors, or stamp collectors. So you have this dollar sign like this with only one bar through it, and then you've got two character spaces before they write the number 500,000. So because you have two character spaces, and there are 38 countries in the world that use the dollar sign to express their money. Argentina dollar, for instance, uses this, but Argentina is 3,400 to 1. So $500,000 in Argentina is only going to be worth $50 US. And it's still a dollar sign, but because of the break in the continuance of evidence, this is just a number. You might as well give them a handful of salt or sand or sugar in grains. I'm serious.
Yeah.
This is what it really means. And then because the note is all boxed, everything's in an enclosed area, so you can't sue them for anything that has value. Note used by itself is a word, is a pronoun. No, no, no. So they said nothing, gave you no value, and they used fragmented sentences of only 3 or 4 words, not sentences, to go in one box to talk about another box. So your note means absolutely nothing, your mortgage means absolutely nothing, and as long as you move into the house and everybody's looking the other way for 30 years, you're going to do voluntary compliance and send them money, which they're going to fraction bank and do internal bank robberies, because they can't lend out their own money. And that's how the dirty little game is played. So back January 6th, 2008, my buddy in Seattle, Washington, after we did the Bellingham seminar, comes to me and says, Dave, he says, they're foreclosing my house. I says, well, what's the contract look like? And he hands me that thing. And I syntax it. I walk into Washington. It took me Wednesday and Thursday to finish it, 4,700 words. And Friday, I walked into Washington Mutual with a federal lawsuit, same one I filed for you, and handed it to the president of Washington Mutual in Seattle, Washington. Monday, the Friday stock closed at 60. It opened at Monday at 10 cents. They filed bankruptcy Sunday night and shut down 2 million homes, just like that.
Did you have a chance to short it?
Wells Fargo, Citibank, Bank of America, Chase, Countrywide, all ran in and picked up the mortgages. And 6 weeks later, all their companies were 95% lower. Their stocks, Citibank went from 36 to 1. Bank of America was 60, they went to $3. I made a lot of money day trading those stocks. Washington Mutual, I could buy it for 0.002 and sell it for 0.2 20 minutes later. One. So this one guy, I remember, I was watching the trades go through. We bought 7 million shares at a penny, and by lunch he sold it for 50 cents a share, and made 50 to 1 on 7 million shares.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, when there's a fire, a gasoline fire roaring and that, just watch it. It might hit another gas tank and blow up on you. You make a fortune in 5 minutes, and 5 minutes later it's not listed and it's gone. So you got to be careful. You got to be right on point with your computer or a couple of computers. Make sure there's no failure if you want to make some money on that. So now you've got this bad mortgage. Nobody signed it. As long as you keep your mouth shut, sleeping dogs lie, you know. But I went ahead and I stood up and I said, no, that's wrong. Syntax is wrong. Title 15, 1692E, false misleading statements, Bernie Madoff case. Boom, $25 million fine, times 2 million each. Washington Mutual had to close their doors overnight. They couldn't afford a $25 million fine. Plus they did bundled, securitized back assets to Wall Street at $25 million apiece. Eric Holder got up on CNN on the 6 o'clock news on every channel and said, the U.S. Department of Justice is going to go after the security fraud from the Securities and Exchange for bundled securitized assets. At $25 million a pop, this is a $400 billion lawsuit. And then I slid my lawsuits in there for collection. It took 1 year and they had it all signed, sealed, and delivered. And so the Securities and Exchange took $25 million off the banks, and the Department of Justice took $25 million off the banks. And our lawsuits paid 30% at the Securities and Exchange and 35% at the DOJ. And on December 21st, 2014, the DOJ announced payouts of $26 billion for the lawsuits, for the whistleblowers. And the Securities and Exchange is also working through the Treasury, and Treasury is making the payments on these. They are being kept confidential. Because once every 4 seconds somebody's kidnapped for money.
Kamala Harris embezzled to California into that.
No, Kamala Harris took the $19 billion and paid off the bankruptcy of California with the $26 billion contract I brokered for her in June of 2010. That took 2 hours at the bank. The first hour at the bank, I walked them through all the syntaxing. I had the bank president and the directors at Citibank, Chase, Wells Fargo, and Bank of America crying. They were, I mean, these people were terrified. They were going to prison for 30 years. Their banks were going to have to pay $25 million a pop. And the whole system was going to collapse, and they were going to be blamed for all of it. I says, well, I didn't come here to scare you, so now I'll tell you the other side of the story. You're going to pay $25 million apiece. And the Department of Justice is going to pay $8 million to each one of our clients as the penalty guaranteed through Title 31, Section 3729 of the Whistleblowers Act. When they get that $8 million, they are going to take $1 million to pay off their home, their cars, their bank accounts, take a vacation, and they're going to buy a CD in your bank for $7 million for 10 years. You're going to pay that CD between 6 and 10% based on what the going rate is at that time. And the $7 million CD is now going to be fractioned at 10 to 1, which you will then have a 30-year or 10-year $70 million CD that you're now going to sell to MasterCard at 18 to 32% interest and make 250% profit off of every $25 million check you write as a damage from this hand as a loss against your bank's profits, which now reduces your tax base. And in this hand, you have new money, $70 million, which you're going to make 18% interest off of, the 32%, and you're going to make oogles of money on this side.
Get 25 million back.
And you have the 25 million times 2.5 times instantly, just in a different account. And also, like everybody's dancing, the women and the men are holding each other dancing, going like, I'm going to make a shit house of money. Excuse me, French. 10 days later, to walk into Kamala Harris and say, here's $26 billion with a big smile on your face. Expecting to have all these homeowners that I wrote lawsuits for walk in with $8 million, $7 million a piece and buy CDs. Instead, she took the money and paid off the bankruptcy of California, $19 billion.
We were one of those lawsuit holders, Judge Miller. What do we do now for recourse?
But 30% of $26 billion is the right amount of money, which is 30% for the homeowners. She started paying off this year.
She has started.
But it's been 4 years at $8 billion accumulating interest at 10% for bonds for the state of California. So she's collected probably double the money, doubled that 8 to 16, and now as fast as they can process the paperwork, it's only the interest off of the $16 billion, which they're still collecting interest for. It's like when you win the lottery, you don't get $300 billion, you get the interest from the $300 billion over a 20 or 30 year period. So the state collects the money and keeps all of it, only paying you the interest off of it. So they don't have to sell bonds or go anyplace else to get this money, this interest money, to pay the people back, and then they always got this big block of money sitting there as an asset for whatever happens. They're doing the same thing with these whistleblower things. I'm the biggest cash cow. I make $8 $8 trillion a year for the United States government, every single year since 1997. I paid off the national debt the first time before 1999 in 18 months. We were $16 billion in debt, and that $8 billion a year. When the bankruptcy ended on November 2nd, 1999, we had $6.2 trillion surplus in the United States Treasury.
I remember that.
And then Bush went ahead and he blew that out in 2 years, and then borrowed another 12 and blew that out. Now Obama's sitting on 16 or 17 billion dollars running that into the ground. I told him, I says, you know, my program, I can pay this thing off. Russell and I can have this thing paid back to you with $400 trillion. That's enough money to run the U.S. government for the next 100 years. And all the interest on $400 trillion would keep the government, virtually all Americans would no longer have to pay taxes. You could work 100% of the time and keep all your money. You might have a sales tax on new issues only, and we can also put that together as presidents, or as directors. We can implement that overnight, because we're drawing from an account with 26 and 213 zeros after it, which is no more than pocket change for the IMF. After 262 years of corruption. You know, in 1750, Rothschild borrowed from Persia to set up the bank. 1800, he captured with Waterloo 80% of all assets in Europe, making him the world's richest man. At which time he then lent the money back, provided you remove the article from all grammar. So he would only write an adverb verb, creating nothing. That's how the Bolshevik Revolution took place, 1917. Stalin could have all the money. He just was not allowed to use prepositional phrases, and killed 80 million of his own countrymen, mining gold in Siberia to build the railroads and build Moscow. So if you know how money flows and how banking works and who the real crooks are, always follow the money. That's how I proved the whole entire New World Order, how I proved the timelines on how the New World Order functions, how the post office is the New World Order, and all the how wars are started, how wars are ended. When Reagan says, "Tear down that wall, Mr. Gorbachev," he said that 6 hours before the end of the Russian international bankruptcy in 1989. And in 1999, 10 years later, the Russian government was still in power. The communists were in power. We just came up through the Cold War, and Mark Martin of Anchorage, Alaska, and myself filed a lawsuit in Vladivostok, Russia. As a result of that lawsuit in quantum language, with a writ of replevin, it means we can go offshore with a lawsuit. And we sued in Vladivostok, Russia, $50,000 against the courts of Anchorage, Alaska, because Alaska is a Russian territory under lease for 99 years, which expires in 2054. So it's still Russian territory. So we filed in the Russian Federal District Court, and they ruled in my favor. But the Russian judge got a little bit nervous, because after all, he was suing the U.S. and the Cold War was going on. So he goes ahead and he contacts the Russian judge, who's a permanent judge on the World Court. So the World Court takes it to 17 judges, and they read it, and they're going, like, David Miller is correct. We hereby award David Miller and Mark Martin that we find the United States guilty of fraud. And with that said, the United States Post Office had to shut down all offshore mail for 2 weeks. Virtually brought the whole world of post office to a standstill. The United Nations canceled all of their international trades, thinking they may have been hit with a quantum lawsuit also at the same time. Then the Supreme Court, or the World Court The Hague, one of the judges contacted the Russian Supreme Court and said, one of your boys over in Vladivostok just punched a hole in the world. Better take a look at this. So the Russian Supreme Court took a look at it. KGB were brought in. KGB looked at it and said, all your judges lied, all your Congress, senators, legislators lied, and 2,000 congressmen, senators, and legislature of Russia were put under arrest for fictitious conveyance of language in Russian language, and either sent to the gulags up in Siberia or were executed, depending on how big the crime was. The KGB took over the Supreme Court of Russia and put in all new people. And that's when capitalism came to Russia. And communism was dead at that point. We were already out of Vietnam. That's old news. But that one lawsuit changed Russia into a capitalist state, and then they started doing trade with the United States. And then the gold started to flow, and the oil started to flow, and now they're the world's largest oil producer. You see, so one lawsuit, one thing, it only takes the prick of an ice pick in a cubic block of ice to break it apart. It only takes a single idea. You're only allowed one verb in a sentence. You can't kill an idea. And so if you kill me, you're going to have 10,000 David Millers tomorrow copying this stuff, and you're going to have to fight 10,000 battles, not just one. And I've been doing a good job of keeping, Russell and I have been doing a good job of keeping a lid on this thing, educating people, showing performance, showing caringness, and we want people to learn how to be right. We don't want to punish you for being wrong, because the whole world's wrong. It's 9 billion to 2. So, you know, we have to be gracious, and we have to communicate with people on a level that they can understand. And teaching this is the way we get it done. So, any questions? Or somebody got another sentence you want me to write up here?
I have any questions on that. I have further questions on the bankruptcy.
Okay, sure.
United States government ceased to exist November 8th, 1999. The Constitution was vacated. 90-Day Rescissions Act. George Bush became the first corporate president of corporate United States of America.
United States of America Corporation. Right?
Which is a foreign enclave that only exists in D.C., Guam, and Puerto Rico. How then has that not been made public news, and how has it continued all the way through Obama, who is now dictating legislation down onto the states, out of the foreign enclave, without informing the people? Is that not a fraud?
No. He's only talking to Washington. He's only talking to himself.
Roger, but I mean, the American people think that he's talking to them.
Well, 3 weeks ago, Puerto Rico pulled out of the United States of America Corporation, kicked the U.S. out, and canceled the U.S. dollar to be used in Puerto Rico. So you got Guam, the Virgin Islands, Grand Simon, and District of Columbia, only 4 now. Now you have one is an opinion, 2 is a certification, 3 is an authorization, 4 is a class action. So as long as they maintain 4, they can maintain a class action 4 for their position of corporate. But the World Court at The Hague in November ruled that the United States of America Corporation is illegal without a charter, written in adverb verb, and doesn't have any standing. The stock markets around the world haven't reflected that, because the market's at 18,000. Where the BRIC corporations now stand at 197 countries on gold, silver, run by China, who adapted this program in September of 2012 to teach the colleges, universities, and high schools quantum language and how to interface with all the other countries as trade partners, giving them a $20 trillion a year windfall with this technology. So you think China was happy with me? Yes. You think I'm an ambassador? Yeah. I'm an ambassador with Russia, with China, with India, Brazil,
Germany,
Solomon Islands.
France,
Yeah, we got all the credentials. They're in the safe place. But when it comes to getting things done, we get things done. I move very fast. I've been a 5 million mile flyer, 2,500 flights, 2,500 seminars, and I'm all over the world. I was standing in a courtroom, in the court foyer once, and 3 attorneys were talking. This is David Miller fellow, and he's got to be some kind of a fiction. He's currently running over 50 federal lawsuits all over the United States. How can he be in 50 federal lawsuits and have authorization all over the United States at once? He said the patriot community created this guy just to scare us. So I had my passport, because I was in a foreign vessel in the dry dock called the courthouse, and I had my driver's license. I pulled him out and says, "Hi guys, here's my business cards. And they took my cards, and then he says, and I'm Federal Postal Judge David Lynn Miller. And they took off for running, jumped into an elevator, and we didn't come back to court. You know, when Russell and I went to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania to order open Benjamin Franklin's Federal Postal Court, he left Salt Lake City, and I left Milwaukee. We both got to the Federal Postal Court, Benjamin Franklin's Federal Postal Court, within 5 minutes of each other. Leading from 2 different directions. He's traveling over 2,000 miles. I'm traveling about 1,000 miles. We both got there within 5 minutes of each other. We walked in and we got all of our paperwork stamped and signed. And passports we have. This is our oaths. Russell's and my oaths. Benjamin Franklin stamps. We both signed across the stamp. December 21st, 2012. Mayan calendar, December 21st, 2012. That was the, nice close up here. And this here on the back is the United States Supreme Court seal that was filed there on December 21st. So we went ahead, and this was our oath of office. We also filed our charter with the post office. And we ordered open the Federal Postal Court that day. And because of that, the United States Post Office was scheduling all these closures all over the United States of post offices, but that one was being kept open because we issued a command order for it.
Yeah, they actually asked us, they're like, you guys can do this. And we're like, yeah, just keep it in your vault. This is who we will. So I said, as long as it's in the vault, it can't be closed. The reason why that occurs is because of compliance with Title 39, Section 101, subsection A and B. When the United States came out of international bankruptcy in 1999, the United States Postal Service no longer had a constitution. And in compliance with Title 39, Section 101, subsection A and subsection B, President of the United States of America and the Post Office had to have a valid constitution. So it went bye-bye, and I had authorized 93 days in front of that on July 13th of 2000 and reissued a quantum constitution, which when the federal government left the District of Columbia on the 2000 presidential election, mine automatically kicked in, and David and I walked right on in with our flag and claims and moved right in on the federal government. And they didn't have choice. It was so easy. It was.
Now the title sites he just gave you came from the maritime codes and fiction, so they were rewritten in quantum language. So all of the paperwork we filed under Title 42 in 1986 for failure to stop and correct the wrong, we did correct the wrongs. So we rewrote all the titles, put them into our Constitution, had them file stamped and signed and registered, and then we wrote it. Then we took it over to the Supreme Court. We took it into the President of the United States, Department of Justice. And when Obama got served at the White House, he was in Hawaii for 2 weeks on his Christmas, New Year's holiday that the president gets every year. He was on a plane in 6 hours back to Washington because they had to deal with our new government taking over the United States of America.
I thought they were getting a vacation every 6 weeks up there. My mistake.
They got canceled. He was back in Washington in 6 hours.
So you guys saw the U.S. Constitution coming to an end, being vacated, and you posted yourselves up with a brand new quantum constitution for the rest of us on our behalf. And, and that now stands as the new U.S. Constitution.
Yes, the one that we have for our country. And then we also used that. It was published and rewritten for the United Nations, that all nations worldwide under a New World Order would have the same Constitution. That's on my website. You can pull it down under the United Nations Constitution.
So these individuals, Pelosi and these other individuals that are arguing that there's no U.S. Constitution, Americans don't have the free right to speech or the right to bear arms, that just exists in D.C.
No,
That's correct.
Right to is in future time. And to is an adverb making speech, right, freedom, all verbs, which don't exist. That's why the Bill of Rights is null and void. And that's been null and void since 1776. And we jumped back to July 4, 1775, under Title 42, 1986, with knowledge of a fraud and authorization to stop and correct it, which is what we did in quantum language. You see, all 4 billion laws of the United States are only a suggestion of how a judge should run his courtroom. And then when you get into that position, you have to rewrite everything in the correct grammar in order to be a fact within that courtroom to have enforcement. I didn't say enforcement, I said enforcement. And only by contract, by getting the other parties in the room to agree with you. Now, one of the big traps that they use is the judge will make a statement and end it with okay. And because you're terrified in front of a judge, you always mimic the word okay, and what the judge just said was a trap, and you mimicked the okay, so you gave credence to a fraudulent statement and screwed yourself. And that's how they do the dirty little game.
I'm gonna release a little banking postal stuff to these guys.
All right, I'll turn it over to you for a while. We'll play ping pong here, bounce back and forth.
So if for whatever reason we do end up in the courtroom, what's the best way to
Call me.
proceed?
Guaranteed. All this, we're going forward. Because when you go to court, the scenarios are unlimited. That's why we don't have a blanket fix-all.
Right.
Because what you think is going on is probably not. And every courthouse and every judge knows that he is an independent entity not connected to any other court in the United States. After Russell and I removed 4 Supreme Court judges, the welder from Wisconsin and the farmer from Wyoming, that's the way the legal system looks at us. They always call me the welder, not the judge. But we were 2 judges with certifications, had our oaths in place, we had all our paperwork in place. So after we did that, the United States Supreme Court in Washington, D.C. has no more power than the county courthouse. And the federal courthouse doesn't have any power because they're a federal district court. Demon got out the underworld for trickery, and it's located in a fiction. Everything is a fiction. So the judges, when we came in, said, by your own words, David, you told us that there are no laws, rules, regulations, or codes, and we get to make it up as fast as we want. I had a case in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. The judge says you can come back and review the file of the man we're holding in jail. It was 6 inches of paperwork, and you got 15 minutes to read it. We closed at 4:30, and it's 4:15. It took me 6 minutes to find what I was looking for 4 inches down in the document. If nobody is talking, everybody is walking, which means they had no evidence. And I handed it back to him. It says, we have what we need. You're babbling. Let my guy go. And they gave him back $95,000, and they left with us.
Okay, so explain the oath to me. I'm a soldier. We still have soldiers coming into the United States military swearing their oath to the U.S. Constitution. Which Constitution are they swearing to, and how are they pulling that one off?
The word Constitution means contract.
Okay.
It's the little phrase that was said when you put your hand up, which means I swear, which were the first 2 words. I was an adverb, making swear to be a verb. Swear means to do evil in others. What do soldiers do? They go out and shoot people. Poor guy at the other end of the gun, he's not getting any constitutional rights here. He's just getting shot. So the position is those few words that you swear to support don't exist. And the oath you just took was an adverb verb. So it's voluntary compliance, and they brainwash teamwork into you to protect your team members. You know, we just sent 4,000 troops over to Iraq to fight ISIS. My son's one of them. He's on a second tour in Iraq. He doesn't have to go over there. He's the son of the presidential candidate.
Right, yeah.
But he also said, I have to support my buddies. I've been training with all of them, and I got to support them. He says, I know I have the privilege of not going over. I says, yeah, but they kidnap you. You're the son of the presidential candidate. That's gonna be somewhat of a political issue.
Yeah, small one.
Yeah. Especially considering they wanna throw, you know, if they're trying to create a situation, they're gonna throw fire on top of this, just like they did Arizona.
Sure, oh yeah, see,
When
locate him right
they
away.
shot up, all the people who were shot came from the same Actors Guild in LA. Everybody who was there who got shot thought they were in a movie, that this was all pretend. Until one of the guys took a bullet, he wasn't, because he just got shot in the arm, he still could tackle this guy and hold him until the police got there. Because then he knew it wasn't, this guy was actually killing people. And what did he do? He was screaming grammar. When you type in the word grammar on the internet, and the only name that comes up, Parsec syntax grammar, as a word search. And so I had 1 billion people a day that shooting took place. And at the end of the day, they've splashed me 17 major news organizations worldwide. In Australia, all the British countries, all English-speaking countries, all the correspondents were ordered to slander me with the McVeigh thing. And now we had 5 billion people worldwide reading my website, going like, there's nothing wrong with Dave, this is a setup. And when it came out a week later, when the FBI said, David didn't do anything, he says this guy's crazy. And when they asked him, "Babe, do you know me?" He goes, "No." He says, "I never even heard about the guy. I never read anything in him. He's totally innocent of any connection with me." And but the word grammar and Parsec syntax grammar now got to the entire educated world, which has been studied now for years. Now you have 5 billion people, and all of a sudden, like country by country, almost a country a week is falling to the people saying the government stole our savings, the government stole our gold, our oil, our mineral wealth, and they're putting it in the sheikh's pockets, they're putting it in the president's pocket. And all these governments have been flipped over, and the people have elected new people that keep the money with the people and give the people the food and the resources and energy that they need. So this is having a profound effect all over the planet. And now China jumped on in September of 2012, which is the Mayan calendar, said that in 2012 that would be the end of the world. The is an adverb making world a verb. We ended the world of verb, ended the world of fiction. And people are educated because they know this technology. And after we announced our candidacy, within 48 hours, 2/3 of all the candidates that thought they were running dropped out. Just that fast. Same thing happened back in 2012. 2/3 of all the candidates, when I put my name in the hat, withdrew the next day. Donald Trump led the stampede. So, and you want to put any of these people on a talk show or a debate with us? Debate means no contract. You want to put them on a stage with us? We'll cut them up and down in grammar to a point they won't be able to.
Mashed, yeah.
And what's the first thing that's going to happen? It's going to be, people are going to talk about the verb.
Anyway,
Follow the money.
we're gonna get a little bit into postal banking,
Postal.
because people have questions about that, mechanics of it. So basically, I'm just gonna give you a quick overview here. Your domicile, place where you live, your living location. C treaty, the ability to use hieroglyphics, see hieroglyphics, such as symbols, numbers, functions. C-pass, which is your ship's papers, dealing with the closure of who you are, your manifest, your fee for freight, the bills of lading, and such. Land pass, authorization to come off the sea onto the land with your domicile being your living location. Drug law, all your timelines, your function, 3-day rescission, 3-day mailing, 3-day rescission, 5-day publication, 10-day communication back, 45-day trust, 90-day trust, 93 days, 3-day rescission, 1 year, 1 day, drug law. So anyway, what I've done when I get a non-performance, which means the federal police at the postal station did not function in a timely manner. Where do you go? What do you do? So what you do is they have set up within their paradox called the They call it the general accounting for the federal postal station. We call it the general counting, the ACC is moved here, general accounting of the federal postal station. You take your claim number, which was your could be your lawsuit number, your registration number, which we've all learned how to do. It could be your mining claim number, which is under a registration number, anything to do with your claim numbers for postal registration, how we register our vessels, and which David has taught in many seminars. We didn't really get into the mailing part of it today, but for those of you watching this in more like of a series, you'll comprehend what we're saying here, especially when it goes to YouTube. And you take your claim number and you posit it as a federal postal station savings clause claim. The fiction used to call that the savings clause account. So you take your number, you posit it into your account, into your claim. And you do it as evidence under Title 28, 1743 under postal evidence. These are all postal descriptions and laws and claims. You then take that and you take the number and the duties that were within the cargo contract, the compliance, which was what you were trying to get the federal employees to do or the state employees to do, and they did function in a timely manner. You take that and you call that postage due commands outstanding balance. It's an outstanding balance. Nobody has complied with the functions of your contract. Right? Nobody complied with the rules. What you tendered, you've already come through your drove law timelines. In a lot of these scenarios, they're already sitting out 48 days, or whatever your timelines. Each one of you have different functions and different timelines, just depending on the complaint or the claim.
Russ, we take outstanding, use the word claim.
Yeah.
Claim standing or
Claim balance.
claim balance or claim standing.
Yeah.
Say gold miners filed claims.
It could be a
They
claim.
didn't file,
Could be
they
a claim
didn't file
balance.
mortgages, but you have to use a positive word. It's
Yeah.
easy to, because we hear the word outstanding so much in the banking
Yeah.
thing, it's easy to fall back into that, use that terminology.
And then you take that, and then you file a levy against it in compliance with Title 2710. And that is writs of attachment to the post office, based upon the service of the method. Did the method comply with the drove law? The functions and the timelines, was it 21 days? Did you have a 3-day mailing? Did you comply with all your mailing times? Because you got to be correct. Then you take that back to the original postal nativity location of from where you mailed it from. You go up to them and say, I have a federal postal consumer complaint. And you ask them for their forms, you syntax their forms. If they don't have a form, you have them cancel their round stamp on your file stamp, on your postage stamp, and you serve it on them. Then you mail it to the Federal Postal Consumer Complaint, which is an organization with the United States Postal Service in Memphis, Tennessee. Upon doing that, you also serve the Postmaster General of the United States Postal Service simultaneously. Then you file a levy against the claim. And you run your timelines in, and you're probably going to have postal inspectors show up to talk to you, so you probably might want to know what you're talking about when they show up.
Good thing he said that, and I have to bring him off the feet at this point. Postal inspector will come with two sheriffs, county sheriffs, and say, are you a postmaster?
Oh, yeah.
He says, yes, you are, and you hold up your stamp that's been canceled and say, I am the postmaster of this piece of paper only.
Correct.
I've endorsed this piece of paper on the back, and it's an equity document. It only applies to me and me alone. I am not a postmaster of your station down on the corner.
The station of that vessel.
Right. So you do not trespass on their vessel. If you say you're a postmaster of that vessel, they will take you into custody for impersonating a postmaster of the fiction. This is a postmaster of the fact. You paid your dollar. So therefore, you have ownership of this stamp now.
Correct.
You can also be an electronic one through the internet and print your own stamps. You can put your own face on your own stamp and sign it as the postmaster of your own stamp. The post office has a form for that.
Correct.
But if you say you are anything more than you are yourself, or have personal knowledge of yourself, you will get arrested for impersonation of a postmaster, which is a felony. You'll go to jail for about 5 years. So know who you are when you do this. And we use this word station. The word terminal means to leave Earth. That's why airports are terminals, because you've left Earth. And now you're in the sea of space. But a train station, you have a train terminal, which would be Union Station in Chicago, for instance. Because of Lake Michigan, the train comes in, stops there, and then goes back out. So it's a terminal at the end of something. But stations are along the way, and you pick up and you posit, and you drop off people. So you have a rotation. So we call this a station because people come into us in contract negotiations, and they go out from us with contract negotiations. So it is a stopping point to learn and do business with us as stations.
To commune with and then go out with. And that's
Right.
why the CPAS is built onto there. That's why the land pass is built onto there. And that's why the drug law is built onto there. Because the station is the contract. Station's only relevant on the contract. But you follow the rules of evidence to be on the land, to be on the sea, and have your sea treaties and your CPAS to function in your day-to-day life. And you do that with Title 42, 1986 knowledge. And as you deal with Title 42, 86 knowledge, you do coverage, which are your fines under document claims, or what they call Federal Rules of Civil Procedure, we call them document claims, Section 60B, for what you find, recovery of what you find. And then you're simply doing a publication of that in compliance with document claim 26E. At that point, you can move forward in your timelines for your drug law and make sure everything is correct. Yeah, don't be doing this, if you're watching this on YouTube and stuff, don't do this unless you run it by me so you're correct, otherwise you could get clobbered.
Anything you want to do, contact us. It doesn't cost you anything. We don't charge for that.
Yeah,
Just want to make sure you're safe.
yeah, because they will clobber you, they'll show up. And they vacated themselves so much with me, so what I do when somebody vacates their job, fiduciary duties, and they don't comply in a timely manner, then you move them into a position, a state of synthetic, something that is not genuine. Because now you move yourself into the sympathizer. So now you're sympathizing their non-doing, and you are just moving forward as the postmaster because someone did not. Which you have the right, you have the position to under Title 42, 1986, because they were delinquent in their drug law timelines. So now you move forward as you were the consignor, and they were the consignees. Now they move themselves out of the consignee position. You move yourself into both, consignee, consignor, and you freeze them out of the situation. Once you freeze them out, then you just levy against the claim number, and you do the duties within the claim, and you comply with that for your balance. So you can get back to zero, back to the beginning, and make yourself whole. Any other questions on that? Yes.
So the land pass, that's all of your domicile?
Of your domicile, or of the contract, or of the station.
Okay. Where do we get, so CPAS, that's on David's website?
Well, you construct it within the paradigm of what you're positing.
Same thing with the land pass?
Same thing with all this needs to be constructed, we have a paragraph. David and I, when we file a paragraph or a contract, we always put CPAS, sea treaty, drug law, land pass.
We do everything corporate,
Correct.
because we're two, and that takes us out of opinion into certifications.
Yeah, and so the reason why we do that is because there's nobody has come through as much as we have and seen as much, so we kind of just check and balance ourselves to make sure we're not doing things wrong. Because we've seen too much. I mean, you haven't been in the meeting, so you wouldn't comprehend what we're saying.
People that did have knowledge that could compete with us are too old, got Alzheimer's, or died. The new group coming in, they can't catch up to the 135,000 hours that we represent. They won't live long enough to compete with it. Even to go ahead and to read and copy what we've done, they still don't know what not to do. And what we do, you all know what do is. What we do, or what we complete, is a position that 1% is correct, just like Smith and Neal of Matrix. Neal's only one guy against millions of Smiths, but 3 + 3 = 6. Smith represents all the other numbers in the world. And correctness, there's only one correctness. So it doesn't matter how much fiction they throw at us. They arrested me once in Edmonton, Canada, put me in the room of no jurisdiction. And the FBI had 2 hours, CSIS of Canada, Secret Service had 2 hours, Immigrations and Customs had 2 hours, detectives of Edmonton had 2 hours, the Secret Service of the United States had 2 hours, and they wanted me to sign papers. As soon as they put documents in front of me, I pulled out my pen, I started syntaxing with number codes and explaining, doing a 2-hour seminar for each one of them. I'm going like, you've kidnapped an ambassador with 82 countries and that, and I'm also an elected king and I'm a sovereign in my own right. And I said, so you got a pretty big, you broke quite a few laws here today, but you're not here and neither am I, so as soon as you're ready to leave, you can just pass me on to the next guy. For 12 hours I sat in that room, and afterwards they said, you are just an English teacher, sir. We are going to let you into Canada. We all voted to let you come in. And the guy that was in Immigrations and Customs, the guy that puts a stamp on, I had him fired from Kelowna as a immigrations officer. He says, I told you I'd get you someday. He says, now you're in my jurisdiction in Edmonton and you're going back to Milwaukee. And I don't care what anybody says, I got the final word. And you're not staying. And he threw me out of the country.
Yeah, so these techniques, people are looking for what to do with your claims, what to do with your things that you have, been through some tough things on. And there was a bunch of non-conformance or non-doings on the duties. I'm just mainly speaking for you guys who are in some of these situations. These are some of the techniques that you can take your claim numbers and move into that position with. What it does is you just froze out the middleman. You froze out the banks, and the banks you want out of your life anyway, probably. I don't know, what your situations are. But this freezes out the banking situations of the whole world. And you can do this on banking. Yes.
When the bank goes to the treasury window with your mortgage, they're taking your money out of your account. Once they get it back to the bank, they put it into their account. Once it's in their account, they write a check for the same amount they took out of your account and take it back the next day and pay it back. They have a 3-day window called the rescission, Title 15, Section 1635A. It's also known as the Lemon Law, Title 29, Section 2301. And they're both the same. It's a 3-day issue.
Huh?
No, we don't do any of that stuff. We only deal in gold, silver, platinum, and correct grammar.
Yeah, that's it.
And when you see contracts written where you're double space, you can have double space. Petersburg, Alaska District Attorney. He writes the first 4 words in single space, the next 3 words every time the word has 2 spaces. So watch your spacing. Spacing breaks the continuance of evidence. In this case, he double spaces vertically. And when you double space vertically, each sentence is its own sentence, regardless what it says. You can only syntax that sentence for a thought, because it breaks the continuance when it moves to the next sentence. Then what we do is we put VC, void continuance, after each sentence, which vacates any sentence construction. Without that, you have complete fraud on the document, no matter what they did. Even if you wrote this in quantum language, if I took anything and I did it with the correct parse syntax grammar, and I double spaced, I would break all my sentences and I'd still be disqualified. I can write a sentence with 33 prepositional phrases. Put 1 adverb verb, and I have 33 adverb adjective pronouns. And I destroy the whole thing. Anything times 0 is 0. Any lie times a fact is a lie. I was called into Australia, Sydney, Australia. Trial number 199, 12 years running, $8 million cost the state. And they said, how do we end this thing? And I walked into court and I says, Judge, I'm a federal judge from America. Can I see the first piece of paper filed at the first hearing by the district attorney, which you call the indictment? And he hands me 2 pages. I spent about 5 minutes, syntaxed it. I says, this is written in adverb, verb, and it's double spaced. I says, there's no continuance of evidence between any sentence, and this is a lie. You want to show me the state of New South Wales. State is a pronoun, of is an adverb, making New South Wales an adjective pronoun. You didn't use hyphens. I says, that's a lie. I says, you double space, so all these here, every word on this document is a lie, and there's 125% fraud. Now, if the original indictment is a lie, which represents 0, times 198 more hearings, which were all also modified, 0 times 198 equals 0. The judge goes, you're right, case dismissed. This is all done with. The man wanted an apology, so he went home that night, wrote a 12-page document, an adverb, verb, and he reopened the case up again. Now for trial number 200, to start all over again. At trial number 214, I was flown back down to Sydney, Australia to put a sock in this thing and shut it down. Did it again. Trial number 124, brought me back in again a year later. Came in the federal court and shut it down again. Trial 229. The Supreme Court of Sydney, Australia made me a federal land court judge and put me in charge of the courtroom. The judge on the bench bowed to me 4 times and turned the courtroom over to me with 4 TV cameras, the kind you see at the TV studios. Had this room with sheriffs and marshals, or the police of New South Wales. And I put on a 90-minute presentation, which was broadcasted all the courts. And I sealed the case, and he was not allowed to file any more paperwork after that. Went home that night and did another 12-page document to open it up for 230. It was not accepted. But I put a sock in it. And then they pulled my visa to get me out of the country. So that's when I syntaxed the United Kingdom's Constitution and disqualified all United Kingdom constitutions in the world. 2 days before that, I gave Ireland her independence from England, and the English Parliament voted to give Ireland her independence for the first time in 660 years. That's the power of this technology. Canceling all mortgages.